Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show, it's about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Mayor of Kingstown. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we open with what is just like a horrible situation. A guy basically blew up a 5-year-old and his mom. Because that basically, dude's name's Kenny. He was basically making a meth lab out of the house, and he left a cigarette. The cigarette fell. He didn't put it out all the way, and it lit the place up. Not just lit it up, blew it up. Because the thing is, I think Kenny wasn't even the little boy's dad. But obviously, it's one thing when it came across the scene. Then a firefighter had to put out a little bit on the side and found out that's where the little boy's body was. And obviously, it hit everybody. Even to the point later on, Mike is like, let me see it again. The guy's like, you want to? And it's like, yeah. He's like, think of it as motivation. Like, motivation for me to do what I'm being asked to do, which we'll get to that in a second. But, the guy's like, usually, like, when it's people's time, it's not too bad because, like, there's a smile on his face. And he was like, what about the young, was it this one's time? And he was like, it's never the young one's time. Like, it's just, that's always like a sad reality of like, I guess being a coroner when you have to pick because some people you're like, okay, they lived their life. They died peacefully, smile on their face at peace. And then other things, it's just, yeah. Cause even Mike says on that little boy, like his face was caught in a scream, you know? But interestingly enough, one of the cops, I kept looking the entire episode. I'm like, why does that cop look familiar? Why does he look so familiar? Like, what do I know him from? And then, like, halfway through the episode, it finally clicked. I was like, right, that's the actor who played Klein, Dutch/Yavala's dad in Killjoys. I was like, that's where I recognize you from. But essentially, they want to handle this a very different way. They want to basically make it so that he doesn't even get to arraignment. They don't want him, like, one of the cops is like, I don't even want our tax-paying dollars to go to keeping this piece of shit alive in prison. So they're asking Mike to call in the favors to make it sure that he doesn't make it to arraignment. They want him dead. But Mike's almost like, you don't want to do this. Like, it's making a deal with the devil. Everyone's on board. Ian, Stevie, the guy who played Klein, as well as even his brother's kind of co-signing a lot of this. But at the same time, like, the police chief or whatever is there, so he's like, right, and you're gonna get this guy signed up as a CI, because I don't know what to describe him as anyway. But Mike's like, I'm already an FBI informant, so it's like, okay, so they all know. Like, I guess, like, Mitch never hid it from anyone, like, who, I don't know if it's, like, for the boys in blues, he lets him know, like, I'm an FBI informant, but he was like, I know, but you gotta, like, we gotta sign this stuff up to make it seem, like, legit and stuff like that, like, why you're actually here, what you actually do for us, we need to legitimize it on paper. So, but essentially the word gets out, and it's like everyone in town knows what this is about. And so to the point, Mike's in this compromise position because the cops in particular want him to set this up between all the different gangs and stuff like that, which he goes to PD early on, and PD's like, wouldn't it be easier just to pop him? And he's like, I know, like, they don't know what they're asking for. He's like, this is the literal deal with the devil, because, and I love that, like, being a structure of this, especially this early on in the show, of like, he's only just taken over the reins from Mitch, but also, like, he's been around enough, he worked with Mitch to know how this shit works. It's like, you go doing this, you're gonna owe them favor. Like, I love that scene at the table he had. I thought that was such an interesting scene where he was talking he's like, you do this, and 2,000 criminals will own your ass. You know, pedophiles, murderers, whatever the case may be, this will be held over your head. They will use this against you. Like, you're making the worst deal. Like, especially for Kenny, it's like, he's not worth this deal. Just find him, pop him like you did the dude who killed Mitch. Like, that's all you have to do. We don't have to go to such an extreme to make sure he gets taken out of the equation. Because the sad thing is, the bastard felt bad about it too. Like, I'm not saying, like, but it's like this level of execution wasn't necessary. Like, but they wanted it to be like, boom, because they also wanted him to suffer too. They wanted him to go through. They didn't want to make it easy. They wanted him in pain for what he did. It's like, but the dude was beating the crap out of him. He's like, he's stupid. You're so fucking stupid. It's like, yeah, he was beating himself up. He didn't mean for that to happen. It was like, he's still fucked up by putting like a meth lab in his house with, like, especially with your old lady passed out, as well as like her son as well as your son, well, her son at the very least, because it might not be yours, but still, like, a kid in the, like, house too, like, why would you do that, you know? But like I said, he's just beating himself up about it, so. But like I said, Mike was like, I don't want to do this because this means calling in all the favors. You can need to basically get the 3 different groups, as they kind of label it, the whites, the blacks, the Mexicans, like, everybody has to be on board with this. And eventually Pete was like, if you can, I think specifically he was like, if you can get the blacks involved, like, I think because he ends up talking to Carlos later on, so I think the Mexicans get involved as well, but it's like, you basically need to get the trifecta of crime in that prison, well, not just in the prison, but just in Kingstown in general, to run, because it's like, I get it, Pete, you do what you do, like, you do drugs, and you run drugs and stuff like that, but your stuff is out of town, so it doesn't affect our boys, it doesn't affect anybody here in town, so, like, your shit goes everywhere, so I respect that, you run a, you know, tight ship operation, so this whole thing with Kenny, that was him and only him, like, to the point everyone associate with him is disowning his ass. It's like, yo, everyone's selling him up the river, because nobody wants to touch it, because Kenny's toxic right now, don't want to be mixed up with him, so... But, like, like I said, I like that point of, like, they do this and it shifts the power balance of, like, it's like you don't know what you're asking for. The fact of the matter is, no matter what you do, because Mike even said it himself, he was like, they want this so bad today, they will regret it a few months down the line. And they will, because... It's because this will always be lorded over your head, like, no matter what you do, because every person you're making this deal with now will call in these chips. They will stretch this for a mile, because even Bunny later on, when Mike is talking to him, is like, yo, like, how far are they gonna look the other way? He's like, far. It's like, oh, we gonna run, we got these boys, and he can tell Mike doesn't want this. He's like, you don't like this, do you? He's like, fuck no. He's like, the whole thing about this is to keep the peace, at least ease the pain. Like, let everything keep operating, but at least keep everything status quo. So keep some form of an equilibrium here. But now things are going to go buck wild, like they don't know what they're asking. They think they know. That guy's like, no, Mike's right. He's like, I just don't fucking care. It's like, you will care. And soon enough, when things get really, really bad because of this decision. And I think that this episode, I think in particular, is going to set the tone for the rest of the season of just like, yeah, like this will be the moment you go like, this is when shit really hit the fan. Because even Bunny's like, yeah, like you can only patch the dam for so long. All you have to do at some point, you're just going to have to let that dam burst. And you know, and he's like, and then Mike's like, and then what? He's like, you do it all over again. Like now that this dam is burst, gets built back up, and then we kind of repeat the cycle. Like it's like keeping the dam plugged up with your little patches here and there was never going to last forever. You're going to have to let it break eventually, and then like eventually things get built back up, and we right back into this cycle of things. Like eventually it will return to some form of equilibrium. But I guess things are going to get worse and worse and worse until there probably won't be a point that you can come back to an equilibrium, because there's probably going to be so much shaken in the core that is Kingstown that there will be no going back. So I like that, like that it seems like, because everyone's so heated about this, that Mike is the only one who can see because even the guy that's like, oh, I know Mike is right, but I don't get this. Like, no, you don't realize how this is going to trickle down. You don't understand the ripple effects, you know? Because like I said, you even have criminals like Petey being like, wouldn't it be easier just to kill him? Like, he's like, honestly, as a criminal, I can't pass up this opportunity. But even I'm saying, like, maybe they should just go ahead and just pop him, put a knife in his hand and make it look like he tried to resist. It would be simpler. Mike would go down. Mike would be all about it. I mean, and I guess in the grand scheme of things, the argument is Mike should have just put him down himself when he had the opportunity. He's like, dude, get out of here. I'd fucking kill you myself. But it's like, right, I don't, because then it's still that nasty thing of like, right, you'd have to clean stuff up for yourself. And it's just like, I guess for Mike, it's like, I being responsible for someone's death is a whole other thing. Like, despite Kenny's situation, despite all his threats, like, he doesn't want that on his conscience. Plus, he doesn't want any evidence leading to him. But it's like, hey, Kenny, you got one option. Turn yourself over to the cops. Let them book you. Then you're going to be put in protective custody. And then, like, basically take it, like, you can beg and pray for forgiveness on death row. He's like, I can do that. He's even like, oh, can I get you a drum? He's like, no. And if you're not out of here in 2 minutes, I will fucking kill you myself. Go. He's like, you almost like the audacity of you to ask me to drop you off to the police station, because he doesn't want anyone in law enforcement. No, he doesn't want anyone to know that he's helping this prick in any shape or form, because that will look bad on him as the mayor. Hell, I didn't even talk about it, but like Carlos, he's the nephew is the dude that killed Mitch last episode, and he was like, Mike was reaching for the gun, like, are we gonna have a problem? And it's like, the guy's like, nah, if you hadn't done it, I would have, because he was a disappointment, and I would have done that for you. It's like, what he did, he stepped on line. It's like, yeah, I know what he did wasn't sanctioned. We're good, so. Once again, showing that balance and how, it's kind of like, no. I love that what the position of mayor, like, means to them. It's like, no, I get it. Like, because once again, Mike had brought it up in episode 1, like, Mitch was off limits. So what his nephew did was super out of pocket, so. I just think that's so, like, fascinating. Just like how, once again, it's like how fragile this whole situation is. Like, it's like a powder keg ready to explode, and now because of this, it's about to pop off. So, I mean, it may not be immediate that we see the effects, but it might be trickling out little by little over the course of the season until it ends up in the most explosive situation that's a byproduct of this episode. Like I said, I think this episode is really going to set the tone and the pace of just everything storyline going forward. We'll see. But Kenny turned himself in, and the cops there were like, it's that motherfucker, get him. And they were like, yeah, call the captain up. They made sure not to ship him in. They made sure that it's like, no. We're not going to be caught in a crossfire because of you. Like, everyone's passing the bucket. It's like, we know what everyone here wants him. So no, we're not going to be a part of this. So I thought that was sad, because they were all looking for Kenny, to the point, like, the cops said, we're going to hit up places. Like, I think home dude's name is Roberts. They were like, right, they're meeting with him beforehand. Like, all this is off the reservation. We need you to treat this like Afghanistan. Can you? He's like, yes, I will. I think that's Roberts. I could be wrong, but obviously he had to make the decision by keeping both Kyle and and Kenny's PO off out of this, because they brought Kyle's PO, but it's like, why am I here if Kenny's PO if he wasn't here, and Kyle and him like tussle, because for Kenny it's like, oh my God, I keep doing it. For Kyle, it's like, the fact is, did you never actually take a look at that house and not realize he was making meth in there with a 5-year-old in there? And obviously, like, Roberts was explaining, like, yeah, he had to watch, like, see what happened to that 5-year-old. So, like, and you, he basically was so frustrated. He's like, all right, I can't have neither one of you. So you both aren't going to be a part of this. And he leaves them out. And they hit that house. And he was telling that cop, like, to be careful. And the guy was like, yeah. And he knocked the painting down. It landed. He immediately got shotgunned in the head. And you're like, ugh. I was trying to think. One of these actors, I'm trying to remember who it was. Because one of them is in Perry Mason. And they kind of do a similar thing. I'm trying to remember who it was off the top of my head. Because there was someone that was in this that's in Perry Mason that I was like, oh yeah, like the guy who played Pete. He was in Perry Mason. That's the connection I had, because like, if you haven't seen Perry Mason, the rebooted like 2020 show with it's Matthew Rhys, right? I'm blanking. Like, it's got him, John Lithgow. Is it Glow or Glow? I've always said Glow, but it might be Glow. Either way, they have a similar thing to this episode. Obviously, it's like in the early 1920s is when that show set place, or is it like the 1940s? I don't remember. It might be the 1940s. I don't remember. I think it is. Regardless, they have a similar thing with like a kid. It's an even younger kid. It's a whole thing, and it's just a very depressing, like, heartbreaking situation. So we'll just kind of leave it at that. But without really spoiling it, they kind of focus on it, and it was kind of that gnarliness of just the same thing with seeing that kid. I mean, God, a lot of stuff does that. I mean, hell, like, even to an extent, The Outsider on HBO kind of did that too, and you're just like, a little too realistic that you're like, I wish this one of those instances you would have, like, told, not shown, It's, I don't know, man. I guess it's just that it's meant to make you have that gut reaction, like, that just, it's supposed to feel what they're feeling, like, to some extent of, like, that sickness to your stomach a little, just like it just, yeah, that's gonna bum you out, it's gonna haunt you. But, that cop got it, then home dude went in it, blah, 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 blah. Even that guy's like, oh, like, if you don't do this, I'm gonna kill her. He shoots her, she falls, and then shoots the guy, and she's like, please, officer, I need an ambulance, and he just walks away. Because she's like, please, somebody help me. So I don't know if they're going to let her just bleed out on the floor. Whether, for him, it's just like, right, he was in heightened mode of like, yeah, I get that's what they meant by the Afghanistan thing of just like, go in, no prisoners, blah, 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 don't care. But I guess that's kind of what they were kind of implying, because he kind of had this shifted on. It's like, right, it's like all that, like, it's there buried underneath. Because they even said, like, oh, like, want to be there when the beast is released, is kind of what Stevie was saying. So, but even looking at that cop that died, and it's just, I guess it reminded him of just, like, people he lost on the other side. That's why he was like, listen to me, but you kind of screwed the pooch on this, and you got because of it, so. Circling back really quickly, because I forgot to talk about this. Carlos and, Mike actually know each other. He's like, yeah, you were in prison like when I was. He's like, things were different back then. And then Mike's like, no. He's like, despite how much time has passed, us being on the outside, ain't a thing changed. I think everything still works the same way. Just the difference is we're on the outside, but we're just as much on the inside the cage as everybody else. Like, we're just in this giant cage called Kingstown. We're all its prisoners, I mean, that was the whole point he was making. Was it last episode, I want to say? He was making that whole point. Probably episode 1 or episode 2, he was making the point of like, right, we don't want them to think, we got to remind them that they're the prisoners and we're not. But it's like, right, after this deal, you're the prisoners. I mean, you're actually kind of worse. You're the prisoner's bitch now. So it's like, So, obviously Kyle, after this day, went home, which his wife is pregnant. Her mother-in-law found out, first and foremost. It's like, oh, like, are you going to tell him? And she's like, oh, tell him what? And okay, and Tracy ends up ultimately, like, she's like, oh, you want some good news? And he's like, I don't want to hear anything, especially if it's good news, because I guess it's like, he doesn't, after the day he's had, he doesn't want, because I think any good news he hears is going to be overshadowed by, like, the shittiest day ever. Or it's like, I don't want to feel good right now. I don't need to feel good right now. All the terrible stuff I've seen, all of it, but like, right, his mom tells Tracy, like, you're his wife, you don't let him dictate, so it's like, what do I do? You're his wife, like, you don't let him tell you no in a situation like this. So she goes with him in the shower and puts his hands on her stomach, and he's like, we're having a baby. And I think it is something he needed after this day, so. How hard that, because even Robert's like, I think when he checked in on his own kid after, like, probably news came out about what this was about, so, like, it hit home for a lot of people, so. I mean, when it's all said and done, you kind of do feel bad for Kenny getting it as hard as he did. I mean, like, everyone was throwing it. It looked like they were throwing, I don't think that was water, probably piss. Definitely looked like someone threw shit at him at one point in time. And then, like, obviously he's in the gym, like, everybody's waiting for him. Every group gets their piece. They're stomping him out. They're shivving him. Like, there was a pillowcase filled with stuff they, like, uppercut him with. And it's just like, he got it hard. Then once again, the cops are just looking the other way. So there was also this line in Mike's and Kyle's mom's like studying when she was teaching about slavery. Basically, she was saying it was a king that was enslaved first, but then he was like, right, you let me go, I will give you 10 slaves in an exchange. And he eventually came for those. And then it became 100. And then there was more and more every following year. And then it's like, and then she said a line that I was like, that's a powerful ass line. She's like, it is said you could walk from Africa to America on the backs of the stolen children and your boat would not get wet. I was like, Jesus, that is the realism of it, but also like the depressing fact of how real it is, and just knowing that's just a depressing notion to think about, but also that's such a powerful and fucked up line. I was like, holy crap, dude. That's a line that stays with you. And it's also the thing of like, right, was that king at fault for basically starting slavery, or was the beginning seed for this the desire to have slaves? Because that's what really started this. It's like, yeah, the king may have like opened the floodgates in his own regard, not realizing like what this would eventually lead to, but it's also still the situation of, if it wasn't for the desire for slavery, like, would we even be in this conversation in the first place? The king wouldn't have even been held like that, you know, if it wasn't that people, someone's desire to like have someone else be your slave, you know? I thought that was fascinating, and I think that could still apply in this case of, once again, the floodgate comparison between like what Mike tried to avoid this episode, but it still went down anyway. Even at the end, he's watching them bury the kid, and it's like there's no like service, and he's like, there's nothing. It's like, yeah, like they don't want, unless they know the religion of the person, they don't want to do anything, because like he's like, I guess it's like the atheist in office not wanting to like apply anything to anyone, because that could probably be blowback on them. So they just, if they don't know the person's religion, they just don't do anything. And the people there are like, yo, if you want to, we could give you a minute, like, just, you know. But Michael's like, no, just do what you're doing, because he's kind of think for him, it's like the kid doesn't even get anything, like a hope, you know. But I guess it's like Mike is probably thinking like, it doesn't matter, like, will it be doing anything for you, you know? Because before he had watched that big bug, it looked like a beetle or something, and there was ants. And then when he came back to it, he sees that big bug is dead, crawling over by ants. I'm like, man, the beautiful imagery metaphor for the current circumstances. Fantastic. So that's where we end off with this entire situation. So, like I said, I'm excited to see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.